All right, so this is a video dealing with stovepiping, extraction issues. I watched a handful of videos on YouTube. They were helpful, but I tend to take things a little more severely when it comes to solving issues with firearms. Some of the stovepiping issues obviously can be attributed to just a dirty firearm, and 22 is exceptionally dirty, like everybody knows. But I want my firearms to function with an amount of dirt inside them. If they don't function as such, then I don't want to own them. And I think some people will stop watching the video at that point, but you know, fuck 22s and their dirtiness. I want them to work even when they're dirty. So this video is going to illustrate some of the things that I went through. Very little of it is something that you can just purchase. This is all stuff that you're going to have to machine or trim or sand. All right, so first off, let's disassemble. We got the safety off. All right, nothing in the chamber. You got to make sure that you dry fire it. Safe direction, nothing there. All right, now that's ready. Get yourself some sort of anything, even a cartridge rim will work for pulling that out. Pull straight down. Out comes your bolt, and you pull forward on the barrel. Bam, comes apart. It's super duper easy. Putting it back together is tricky, a bit of a Rubik's Cube, but even when you know how to do it really well, you still make the infrequent mistake. All right, so one of the things I did was I took this apart. I don't know what this is called. We're going to call it a doubler. It's got two pins, and they have been peened to the point where they spread out a little bit and just grab. But they're just barely grabbing. They don't need to do a crazy good job, and you can still push them out if you're careful, and then you want to peen them when you put them back in again. In here is, there's a plunger, and at the bottom there's a ball bearing. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, I don't know if this is, I've never even tried this camera. All right, here we go. But there's a ball bearing there, and you can see the spring. The plunger has a small cylinder that slides inside the spring. And obviously the spring has a nice machined surface on either end. And what this spring is responsible for is not only retaining the doubler and holding the whole firearm together, which seems important, but it also launches your hammer. It's the hammer spring. And what did I do? Well, I actually trimmed about 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more, maybe like 3/8 off of it. And the reason I did that is the hammer. All right, there's my hammer. It rides. So not only does the bolt press the hammer back, you know, and cock it, resetting it, but the hammer has tension on the bolt the whole time. It's literally like, I don't know if I can illustrate it here real well, but basically there's the hammer, and the hammer rides really hard. It gets pushed down and keeps pressure on the bolt the entire time. Obviously, that's a significant amount of resistance. And I felt confident I could trim some off because I didn't think the hammer spring needed to be that hard. I mean, how many joules or just like energy, right, that does it take to set off one of these rounds? I'm guessing almost nothing, right? So how hard does the hammer need to freaking hit the rounds every time? I said, you know what? I can trim a little bit off. This spring, when you take it out, you know, if I trimmed 1/4 inch off, it goes from the bottom of the plunger is probably about right there. Where you can't see my finger, but right about here, that's the bottom of the plunger. So the spring, when you take it out, it's like this long. And I said, man, you know, it might even be longer. The point is that I trimmed off 1/4 inch and reassembled, and I haven't had any issues, except that it helped the firearm function. Something to consider. I would say that, how do you gunsmith? How do you get into gunsmithing? You have to be willing to make mistakes. You have to be willing to say, okay, I just screwed that spring up. I'm gonna have to go buy another one, and I don't have to feel bad about it. All right, it's trial and error. I haven't had to replace any of these parts from me damaging them. I've been unhappy with, obviously, many of them straight from the factory, so that's what we're going through. All right, so I trimmed that spring, and they have machined ends, and what I did is I put the rough edge now, because I just trimmed it with a pair of dikes, the rough edge is up against the plunger side. The reason is the plunger creates a perfectly flat surface, and that spring with its uneven end now sits wonderfully against that plunger, doesn't cause any problems. I left the machine side up against the ball bearing because it needs to be like perfectly centered on that ball bearing. Otherwise it would probably start to wear out. Rub and wear out. But again, remember that plunger's got a cylinder. All right, here's the spring, and it's got a cylinder that centers the spring on the plunger. So you don't get that out of the ball bearing so much. All right. What else did I do? So next what I did is I rounded out the top of the hammer. Now the top of the hammer, obviously, the hammer has to hit the firing pin. That's right down in there. All right, it's this guy right here, and it does sit awfully high. It's not, I wouldn't call it necessarily centered on the on this face here. It sits up towards the top. This is the underside right here of the bolt, and so I had to be careful how much I removed. But I did radius it. It was almost like this. The top of this hammer was almost squared off. Okay, so I gave it a pretty nice radius, but I was cautious. Obviously, I sort of walked it slowly into it. And the reason I did that again is because this firing pin is not in the center. It sits high. So if I remove too much material here, then this hammer is not going to hit the firing pin at all. That would be a bad time. You'd have to order another hammer. But anyhow, so it comes out of there really, really easily, and I can demonstrate that. So you've got this cross pin right here, and there's this little spring clip. Hard to see. It's right in here, okay? And what you do is you can put a little pressure on it, and what you do, let's see here, need another tool. All right, so I'm just gonna I've got this little 90-degree probe. I'm just gonna put a little pressure on it, kind of stuff it down in the hole there, if I can pull this off. All right, there we go. And then I'm gonna push this little spring back. All right, now, oh, it didn't move all the way. There we go. It's a little spring that goes into a recess, okay? The recess is 360 degrees on this pin. So when you're going back in again, you just push the pin out of the way and it'll lock into place and tell you where it needs to go. All right, but now that it's out, I can actually push the pin all the way through, okay? And you'll see the recess in the pin right there, okay? And then you slowly move the probe out, and the hammer comes right out. All right, and it's got this little piece is directional, right? But it can only go one way. Comes in from the, I guess, the passenger side of the hammer. And then I put that in a vise, and I tried to give it pretty close to a mirror finish. I think I started with a little Dremel tool, and then worked my way all the way down to like 1500 grit. Okay. Let's reassemble. Your safety falls out when you take the hammer out. Pretty obvious how that comes back together. You just stuff it right in the safety hole. Another thing that I did that's kind of neat is I like visual confirmation. So these have a, it's like hard to see even with the oil, but there's a safe little S stamped in there. And then there would have been an F stamped in there. And I couldn't see it. And yeah, you can train with a manual of arms, but this pistol was strictly purchased for working on my my aim, right? So I didn't want to learn the manual of arms for this. I just wanted to practice my aim, and I like visual confirmation. So what you do is you put this in a vise, you put it on a drill press, use like, what is that, like 3/16 inch drill bit, you center punch it, and you just do a little, you know, with the drill bit, and then you can take a red paint pen and do a nice little mark in there. You know, obviously get the grease out of there first, let it dry, and now you've got visual confirmation for when it's ready to fire. If you don't see red, it ain't ready to fire. All right, let's put that back in there. This is pretty easy to reassemble. Hard to do wrong. There's, let's see here. This spring, there's a spring, there's a silver, I don't know, I don't think it's the sear. Maybe it is, yeah, maybe it is the sear. That has to go up, I think. Let's see here. Yeah, I want to say you got to push that all the way forward, but I could be wrong. It's been a while since I took this apart. And the safety, is that going to, I don't know if the safety's going to hold it. All right, so again, you've got your piece coming in from the passenger side, drops right down in there into this square hole. It's kind of interesting. And then what I like to do is line up everything. Just send your probe right through there. Okay, and let's just make sure that the function's right. I may have put that spring in backwards. No, that's right. Because it's like, that's that spring-loaded sear. There you go, I'm pulling the trigger and it's breaking. Yep, that's exactly what we want. Safety's functioning. Awesome. Okay, it's a little tricky, but here's your pin somewhere. All right, here we go. Again, you want the 360-degree recess there on the pin. Obviously, that goes towards that little spring that was right in there. And you can actually slowly pull this out and slide your pin in after it. It just acts like a guide. Or not. Maybe I'm being difficult. What's going on here? Maybe I'm wrong. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. I know what's going on. So, nice. Let's keep that on video. All right. Everything's going back together again. We can do this. I find that the hardest part of reassembling a firearm is talking while doing it. That is definitely the hardest part. All right, I've pushed the sear forward. Safety's going back in. Maybe I shouldn't be talking. Wow. Yeah, I shouldn't have been talking. Now I just lost the plunger. There's this little plunger. Come on. There we go. This piece just fell out. You see that? I know exactly where it goes. Everything with firearms is usually pretty damn self-evident, but it goes right there. And then this guy here, part of the, probably just part of the linkage here, that has a little piece of sheet metal that holds it down right there. So I guess you have to be cautious about losing that. Put that piece forward. Might even be held in place right there. Let's put the safety in. Okay, safety's back in. Let's do the hammer. Okay. Hammer's back in. Visually, I'm looking down the this pin's the hole that the pin goes in, the trough, and we're just going to line everything up as best we can. Oh, I'm losing. The hammer is slipping away. All right. So we are almost all the way there. Pin's in. But now we got to get the spring, the little tiny spring out of the way. All right, I'm pushing. And what's going on here? There we go. All right. So the pin's gone in now, but the spring is on the wrong hand side. It's on the wrong side in order to grab that the recess. So I'm going to slide the pin just so slightly back, keeping everything still aligned. All right, we'll grab the spring any second now. I think this probe's just a little too big. All right, spring is towards the rear. That's how you know you've got it in right. And you hear that click. Now it's in the channel, and I just tend to push it in a little bit, and that kind of like locks the spring in. But you can look at the pin, and you'll see that it's equal distances apart. It's on fire. The hammer will not go forward. Because it's not spring loaded. Remember, this is your hammer spring. But what you can do is lock it and then pull the trigger. It's like a two-stage trigger, and it should fall forwards. If it doesn't, then you haven't reassembled it properly. You can hold on to it, pull the trigger, and there it goes. All right. It's a little finicky, but you don't have the firearm fully assembled. So anyhow, that was super long and winded. All right, you should have fast forwarded. So I did all that, and I still wasn't happy with it. And I noticed that the hammer was actually getting scored. I'd put almost a mere finish on the hammer, and it was getting scored by the bottom of the damn the bolt, or the bolt carrier. Anyhow, so what I ended up doing was actually polishing this part right here, just from here to here, the whole length. And it looked like the surface of the moon. And after all that, it works a heck of a lot better. There was a lot of resistance. One, because the hammer, it's sitting up like this, and you've got to like work that spring down. So I trimmed the spring. I rounded this out so that the bolt could slide over it better. And then there's a ton of drag as the bolt goes back. So I reduced that drag significantly by polishing that. All right, so let's reassemble. Just put this right in here. Make sure your hammer's all the way to the rear. Just sets it in right there, and you push back. All right, that's pretty simple. Bolt, super easy. Bam. All right. Now, what you want to do is, you can see in there, you want to pull the trigger. That drops the hammer forward. Let me show you that again. All right, so bolt goes in. You see right there, you can see the hammer. It's back. Pull the trigger. Drops forward. Then what you do is you put this guy in there, like so. You want this, yeah, just like that, okay? Jam it in there. Bam, it's in. Now, you have to tip the firearm. All right, you see nothing here? Nothing? Okay. You tip the fire. Well, that was not real obvious. All right, it's super hard to see. I apologize. Okay, there's a pin that goes to the hammer. That has to go this direction, all right? So what you literally have to do, you hear that clunk? Like that. Now you reassemble. So the gun has to be upside down, and you're done, in theory, but you always want to rack the slide once just to make sure. Bam! If it doesn't go all the way to the rear, you haven't broke anything. You just have to start over and pull this doubler out that's got the hammer spring in it. Now it is fully reassembled. And when you polish the top of the hammer and the bottom of that bolt, oh my God, it's so freaking nice. So, did I replace the extractor and the extractor spring? Yes, I did, and here's that video now. Okay, so a couple things I wanted to illustrate. First, it took me a while to figure out how to replace the extractor and extractor spring, and I found an absolutely lovely way of doing it, so I thought I'd pass that on. And then just, I don't know, my observations. All right, so here we go. There's your extractor right here. All right, and then you've got the plunger right there, and there's a spring obviously somewhere inside this. This pin right here is for removing your firing pin, but what you can do is actually grab the plunger and spring and leave them in there if you want to, or when you go to reassemble everything, it'll still hold on to everything. All right, so here we go. This pin, it's not under much pressure. You can just slide it back and forth. You can even pull it all the way out and nothing happens. All right, but what I like to do is you leave it in partially like that. All right, and then you use your probe. This one's got a little 90 degree on it, but you could probably use any type. And you press the extractor like this, which leaves a little bit of room for the probe to get in there. Like, come on, any minute now. All right, probe's in there. Carefully draw back the extractor, and then you put pressure, like I'm doing. I'm pressing with my finger to hold the plunger and spring back, and then the extractor, like you see here, it just falls right out. Now I could actually now put a new extractor back in, okay, and be done, but I want to replace the spring as well. So I'm going to put my finger over the end and launch the plunger. Wow, that was retarded. Let's try that again. All right, I'm going to leave that in there because, you know, it was fucking hilarious for one. And two, it's a really good example of what not to do. You got to keep your finger over the end, okay? And probably if you're going to be fussing with parts, you probably want to at least release the tension. Luckily, the plunger, it only took me like 30 seconds to find. It's not a big part, but it's definitely not a small part, and it really stands out. So that was easy to find. And you can just release the parts. All right, so first observation is, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it, with any of these parts. Let's see here, let's feel for tension. It's not super exciting. I would say that my experience with the extractor was that it was super duper soft, and that can definitely affect ejection. All right, so I bought, I don't know, there's sort of an industry standard. I don't really care either way, but it was cheap. But I bought a Volkkortsen extractor, and it says the spring is only supposed to be used for 10-22 rifles. Well, okay. I just want to show you. Do those springs nearly look like a match? What are they off? Like a 1/16 of an inch? Even the I would say the cross-sectional diameter, like the actual gauge of the wire used, or this what is it? I don't know, the spring steel or whatever. The gauge is visually 100% identical. Okay, but since I was buying this and it said not to use the spring, I said, okay, let's try it. Let's buy another spring. All right. So this one here. This is all from Midway USA. It says Ruger extraction spring. Specifically, it says 1022s. It wants to use it for everything. It says 1022 Magnum, Mark II, Mark III, 2245 pistols. It's the whole gamut. And this spring says it's only for 1022 rifles. So I thought that was interesting that this spring's supposed to cover everything. Now let's take a look at that spring. Oh, okay. All right. Compare it to the old spring. That is dramatically different. What is that, like 5/16 or something like that difference? Not to mention the fact, and it's hard to see, but I can easily tell, and you know, I'm a amateur machinist, I can easily tell just visually, that the gauge of the new spring is larger. Let's just see what it feels like. Very informal test here. But I'm guessing it'll have a different feel. It might be softer. I don't know, but let's see what it feels like. Oh, okay, so it's pretty squishy. Let's see what this one feels like. You know, this is so informal. Huh. I would say that this one's harder. I kind of expected it to be more firm. But let's see if I can reassemble without shooting the plunger across the room. All right, so we're going to push that pin out, right? So now I have a piece of material to hold on to. We'll put the plunger. Oh, I'm ahead of myself here. I want to use the new Volkkortsen extractor. Okay. Actually, let's just feel the Volkkortsen spring. It's identical. It feels identical to the original one. You can tell the difference between the extractors. This one looks like it's been punched out of a piece of steel. And this one, I don't know, but it's got really crisp edges. Super duper crisp edges. So that's how you can tell. I mean, this is definitely a high production part, just stamped. Okay. New spring over the plunger. This plunger's a little directional, so I've noticed that like you can get it in there and then kind of fuss with it later. Once you've got the extractor in, it can't go anywhere. All right, I don't know if you can see that, but I've got my probe, right? Dig it in there, just draw it back, and then I'm gonna press with my finger. I'm pressing on that pin again. Got my finger over the edge. God damn it. All right, we're gonna leave that one in too. All right, here we go. All right, again, it only took about 30 seconds to find, and this shop is humongous, but this part really is pretty unique looking and easy to pick up on the floor, even in this dirty shop. I would say that if you're gonna do this, like I'm recommending, and this is definitely the way to go, don't talk when doing it. Just do it, get it over with. I think that's what's screwing me up. Let's see here. I'm bracing it against my belly here. I'm thinking third time's the charm, but I could be wrong. Oh, that feels good on my finger when it slips. The new spring is a lot stiffer, or noticeably, I should say, noticeably stiffer, so it's actually slipping out of there. It's fighting me. I'm pressing real hard with my finger. Oh, it's slipping out. It only stays for a little while. Interesting. Well, either way, I think I can actually get... This is proving a little tricky here. Do. All right, we're in business. Now the extractor's in, but again, the plunger is directional. All right, and just from the feel, this is incredibly more firm. A lot more firm. Wow, I like that. So I wanted to reshoot those videos because, I mean, I look like an idiot, right? But now that the Volquartsen extractor's in there and the Ruger brand 2245 spring is in there, dude, it's a ton more resistance and it's a fighter. It doesn't want to come out of there. I think I'd actually have to get like really serious about this. Maybe even get like a large Ziploc bag to do the process, because it definitely wants to shoot off. And if you did it inside a bag, I think that would be a fantastic way to catch it when it flies off. Anyhow, so that's how that's done. Wow, maybe that wasn't any use to anybody, right? And that helped a lot. That's going to help with reliability. I mean, it's pretty much, it seems pretty darn essential if you have one that's super underpowered and stovepiping like mine was. And again, mine fired like 1,000 rounds before it had any problems. So I guess the spring weakened, or who knows? Hard to say. But often when you have a big problem, like a firearm not functioning, it can be one thing, but more often than not, it's a lot of things all adding up. And so that's the stance, that's the perspective I tend to take when working on a firearm. I go, I'm a crappy detective, so I go, well, how did I get here, Obviously, I bought a firearm that ain't working, but why is it not working, And you can have a weak extractor and spring, and okay, that shouldn't stop the firearm from functioning. There's other things that are adding up to it, right? By polishing those components, that's going to reduce resistance, and the bolt will fly back a little bit faster, right? I did not do anything to the bolt spring. It's already pretty light. It's just that little piddly spring, that long one on the top of the bolt that you saw, all right? It doesn't, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. This is, again, just a damn 22. It should function super easily. No issues, but it didn't. What else can I say? I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else to say. Real happy with the pistol. I purchased it watching YouTube videos and decided this was the one for me. It's a Mark II, 2245. Subsequent versions have way more safety features, and I don't like safety features. And they also they switched it out with a 1911 grip, and I don't own a 1911. Would never seek one out. Nothing wrong with them. But, dude, it's fucking 100-year-old technology. Still works, but there's a lot of better options out there now, in my opinion. So, I like this one. Also, this is the only one with a large trigger guard, like an almost normal trigger guard. The first, I don't know if they had a Mark I 2245, but a lot of these pistols have a trigger guard that's like that big. Maybe even a little smaller. It's such a tiny, it's for little kids. This is like the only one with a big trigger guard, and that's what I wanted, and I'm not a 1911 person. So, that's how I chose that, and upon another YouTuber's suggestion, they recommended that you remove some plastic right here and right here. And what that does is it allows the magazines to seat nicely. See how there's a gap now? Without removing that plastic, that polymer, there we go. Without removing the polymer, these are a bear to seat, man. Such trouble. So you have to kind of smack them and really work with them. But now that they're quite nice and they drop nicely. I will say the only thing that's sad about this pistol, other than it not working right after 1,000 rounds, is you can't put the magazine in like that. It goes in like that. See? That's a little odd, and that's because the original grip, the way it was designed, rakes back really hard, and this is more of a traditional pistol grip. All right, hopefully that was helpful to somebody. Whew, whew, that's so nice. Oh my gosh. Oh, night and day. Still lots of resistance. You want that hammer to be hard. You want it to, you want it to be firm. You want it to hit the bullets hard, or hit the firing pin, I should say, anyhow. But you want it to do it smoothly, thus reducing the risk of stovepiping and having a non-functioning pistol. All right, thanks for watching.